In this plant, workers didn't even have like respirators, right? They had like these little cloth masks. The fire department didn't know what chemicals were there. Like they didn't actually list the chemicals initially, which they're required to by OSHA.
Let's actually kind of back up and do some of the background filling in for folks, because you have done an excellent job with that. For in particular, I'm thinking of your pieces for In These Times and The American Prospect. So let's start with the article that you wrote first for In These Times. Will the clean energy auto economy be built on factory floors riddled with toxic chemicals and safety hazards? Talk to us about, what you were looking at in that article.
Yeah, let me sneak in a sentence that was cut from something I wrote that I think your readers your listeners may appreciate. So in the United States, corporations are legally purported to be people. In Europe, they are gods. So the conglomerate Stellantis, a modern day version of the Roman god Saturn, as you mentioned earlier, these corporations have an insatiable appetite. This is what we're seeing, right? They just want to cannibalize the jobs of the American worker by shutting down plants, by making sure that these EV jobs are terrible jobs that don't provide the benefits and wages that generations of millions of American workers have fought for. So right now we're seeing that, these corporations are on a monopoly-seeking rampage, and they have only grown. So GM, right, has created a legal fiction by partnering with creating these joint ventures with other folks that have experience in the EV sector. And the reason why they've done that is because they don't want to fold those workers into the national GM agreement, right? They want to keep them separate. They want to maintain tiers, right? Like this is another way of maintaining tiers and dividing the working class. So what you see in Ultium in Lordstown, a plant that's a stone's throw away from where the Lordstown assembly plant used to be, who, for your listeners, this happened under the Trump administration, where he made a lot of promises when he campaigned in Ohio, telling people, we're going to bring, we're going to keep jobs. We're going to do. So he's going on the record, talking about what he's going to do to save auto jobs, and it's all bullshit. It's a lie. Like the company that he actually supported to create jobs has just gone bankrupt. They had a partnership with Foxconn. And so people in the Rust Belt have experienced this since the 1970s. The Ohio has hemorrhaged thousands of jobs, and this new plant was a shining example of the revitalization of the auto sector. And the UAW supports the transition to clean energy, but they just want to make sure that those jobs are good jobs, that they're safe jobs. So what I wrote about in These Times piece was, I would hope, I was aiming for the modern day jungle for the 21st century. Like people think of a factory floor and they think of it being loud, of it being dirty. I snuck into the lobby of Ultium Cells, and it feels like a corporate office. But behind that corporate lobby, workers talk about explosions. They talk about this chemical called electrolyte that basically, if it falls on your forearm, it burrows through your skin and tries to reach that calcium in your bones. Really scary stuff. And, people had talked about some of the things that were happening at this plant, especially the local news channel had done a really good job doing what Labor Notes does best, which is talking to workers directly and hearing from their working conditions, right? Because it's not only about, the wages matter, but it's about the control that we have over our conditions of work. And in this plant, workers didn't even have like respirators, right? They had like these little cloth masks. The fire department chief was scared, to venture into the facility when calls came in because they didn't know like what chemicals were there. Like they didn't actually list the chemicals initially, which they're required to by OSHA. But we know that OSHA is toothless. The only guarantee for worker safety is the only guarantee that workers have for their safety is each other. We enforce our safety by becoming shop floor militants. And that's what the workers at OTM cells did, right? So they banded together when they didn't have showers, which were mandated by OSHA because of the chemicals they were dealing with, right?
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And they took action, and the company eventually installed showers. In other instances, workers talked about like the way that this plan operates is like I describe them as like these vestibules that workers have to sometimes go in and remove if there's a jam, they have to go in and remove it. And in some instances, the managers have forgotten that the workers are inside and have tried to actually lock these machines. So really horrific working conditions. And the article was like so long, and I had hoped that more people would have picked up on it, because it gives you a real good sense of like what the EV transition could potentially be unless unions and the whole labor movement rallies together and demands more from the Biden administration, that our taxpayer dollars are actually going to corporations that are going to build these jobs, but these jobs must be good jobs and the safety standards need to be in place, right? So that's like a brief summary. And because my brain is fried, I started talking about Stellantis, which is not the company that is the joint partner at OTM Cells. That's General Motors. Stellantis is the company that shuttered the Belvedere plant. Right. And that's the American Prospect story. So sorry for my wires getting crossed, but we are live. You're getting the real deal.
Yeah. No worries at all. And so one of the things that, about these battery makers, you mentioned the low pay, unsafe working conditions, really bad stuff. There is some attempt to fold them into the current master agreement that the UAW has with the big three, with the, in this case, in the case of Ultium, it would be the master agreement that the UAW has with GM. And some U.S. senators have come out in support of this. What is the status on that? And can that happen? I know that there's some kind of like legal questions about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Jacob. Thanks for bringing that up. So the union has been very careful to not say, you must fold them into the master agreement. I don't know if in terms of bargaining language, I don't know if it doesn't fall under like a permissible subject of bargaining, right? Like it's a separate company. Like that's what I mean about it being a legal fiction, right? So it's important for people to understand that there's been some misreporting out there, unfortunately, even in the American Prospect, about this question. So politicians can say, fold them in. The union can say, mirror the standards of our GM contract. But that's a key point. So the person that has leverage here is Joe Biden. Like that's the reality, right? The truth of the matter is that Biden is giving these corporations oodles of cash, and he and the U.S. Congress are going to determine whether they're creating a factory floor that's riddled with hazardous conditions, and workers are getting locked in machines, and chemicals are bearing through their skin and destroying their bones. Or are they going to create jobs that provide a middle class standard of living for the working class of this country? That's the question. So for the folks that are tuning in, the union is aware that the EV transition is going to pose some challenges. because from what we've know so far, and there are various reports out there, right, that it's going to require fewer workers. So here's where what is actually part of the bargaining is around plant closures. So there's Factory Zero here in Michigan, for instance, that GM has an electric plant here, an electric vehicle plant. So let's say GM wanted, I don't know, for whatever reason, this is a hypothetical. Well, let me not give hypotheticals, because that's not a good way to pose the question here. But the point is that in the event that there are plant closures as part of the EV transition, or they have to reduce the headcount, the unions want some safeguards, right, to make sure that there are jobs. And this is the thing, there's going to be a lot of investment. So there are going to be a lot of jobs produced. The question is, what kind of jobs, right? So it's a tricky question, because the union is bargaining over job security, right? Because there are some unionized workers already in these plants, including Spring Hill, for instance, in Tennessee. So that's my muddled way of describing that. Hope it's clear to your listeners.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.